What's going on, guys? I had a new idea for a potential series of videos on some viable PvP builds for players at different soul levels and different skill levels. Not sure how I feel about it yet, so let me know if it seems like something worth continuing. This time I'm going to be showing you guys a simple, effective, low-level invasion build, and it's going to be particularly good for anyone who's inexperienced with PvP, maybe people looking to get their feet wet for the first time with some invasions. It's definitely still effective for experienced players, but it has a really simple win condition that makes it good for new players. As you can see here, I went with the Warrior starting class, just because my version of the build has the lowest overall soul level this way. I'm using the Lightning Falchion, so the only real requirements are 9 strength and 13 dex, and there are levels to spare, where you can still invade the depths, Blight Town, Sands, whatever, and I push all the extra points into Vitality and Endurance. One thing to note is that there is weapon-based matchmaking in this game, and no one's really too sure exactly how it works yet, so if you're concerned about that, maybe you want to stay on the safer side of things, you could start with a Falchion plus 9 maybe, throw on some charcoal pine resin, and it's not quite as strong, but it's still viable, and it could potentially put you into a lower bracket, but no one knows for sure. In the left hand, I use the Grass Crest Shield, which is pretty standard when you don't have something you specifically need there, like a catalyst or whatever. The armor and ring setup is geared towards getting past a couple of important poise breakpoints. Depending on who you ask, people will say that there are different important numbers, whether it's like 40 or 50 or whatever. My setup with Havel's Helm, the Hollow Soldier Waist Cloth, and the Wolf Ring give me 65 poise, which is more than enough for like almost everything. You should check out a wiki page just so you know ahead of time what you can poise through and what you can't. This is just a template for a build, so you could choose different armor, you could choose different rings if you want. I think that this build is pretty good though, and I don't know how much more optimal you're going to get. Obviously you're going to need something to invade with, whether it's the Red Eye Orb or cracked Red Eye Orbs, and I have a stack of green blossoms on me, but I pretty much never use them. They are useful though. I'm going to start by talking about what's good about this build. The biggest strength comes from the combination of poise and the falchion. Curved swords are one of the strongest weapon categories in the game already. The attacks come out fast, they do good damage, they stun lock, and when you have poise so you can tank through the first hit or two from someone else, you become that much stronger. If you see your opponent doesn't have any poise and you aren't afraid of getting parried, you can walk up and spam two-hand light attacks and win pretty much every time. In this case, because I saw the guy two-handing his weapon and wearing light armor, I knew I could just chop away. Some people will call this cheap or cheesy or whatever have you, and it is definitely very strong and very easy to play, but there are counters to it. Someone wearing Havel's helmet should be a dead giveaway that they're stacking poise, as well as the relatively obvious effect from the Wolf Ring making that sort of gray, pulsing effect around the body. Knowledge is a large part of the game too, and if someone sees someone looking like this and tries to trade hits anyways, they're gonna lose. And here it is again. I see that a guy has less poise than me, I walk up and I just chop him down. In terms of general use, the Falchion's still pretty good. It has a solid moveset overall. The strong attacks aren't that useful, but they can be used in corridors when you don't want to be hitting the walls to your left or right. The running attack is pretty good, comes out fast. It has low critical damage, which is a pretty big drawback that I'm going to talk about again later, but you can make up for it by roll catching after the crit with the two-handed R1 attacks. Overall, this build pretty much turns into a 1v1 king. This build does have some various weaknesses and downsides, and probably the biggest one is just that the playstyle I've been advocating, which is to just trust your weapon and armor and start smashing that R1 button, is very predictable. An experienced player that sees a Falchion will be immediately ready to parry, making the walk-up R1 strat pretty much unusable. It almost creates like a rock, paper, scissor dynamic with your first move, but I'm not going to go too in-depth in that just because this is like a beginner's guide. If you ignore this advice, which you totally can, and the other person knows what they're doing, they're going to kill you 100% of the time. But if they don't, which is often the case with invasions, you'll be fine. Ideally, only plan to start off with R1 spam if you know that they physically cannot parry you. The better idea is to test the waters by running at them, seeing what they do, and that'll let you avoid a parry if that's something they're prepared to do. There are other small cues that can tell you people don't really know what they're doing, like if someone's just holding their shield before we're even close to them, they probably don't even know how to parry. One big piece of advice to keep in mind in these situations is that you don't want to run your whole stamina bar down. It might seem fine sometimes because you can chop through their stamina bar on their shield, but if you run out and they still have their shield up, you're probably going to get punished hard without being able to roll away. I didn't pick up any clips while I was recording earlier, so I'm going to use this one instead. Just imagine using a Falchion in a situation like this. They're really short. All the curved swords are pretty short. And with that short range, if someone has something you can't poise through and they're controlling their space properly, it can be really hard to get in. Specifically, spears are the bane of a Falchion's existence. It's not uncounterable, but it's probably like a 70-30 matchup, something like that. and poise is only a stopgap fix. The last downside that I want to talk about is how it fares against multiple players at once. The best way to deal with multiple people in one world is to just backstab one of them and have them die instantly, whether it's because your weapon has really high AR or because you have the Hornet Ring. My backstabs appear to be doing around 300-400 damage, which isn't bad, but it's not enough for an instant kill by any means. For the most part, against multiple people, you're not going to have time to just chop them down 4 times, because the other players will step in and hit you. Here you can see I time it with the spellcaster trying to throw a fireball. I'm able to chop them down, but generally speaking, you can't rely on it. As a result, a lot of the times the outcome is going to be you getting a couple good hits in here and there, but they can just cover for each other, heal it off, and ultimately you get overwhelmed over time. The best advice I have for a situation like this is to either wait for or make your own opportunity where one of the players can't get to you, and then you can just chop another one down. This becomes increasingly difficult as you face more and more phantoms. I mentioned earlier that this build makes you a god of 1v1s. Essentially what you're trying to do is create multiple 1v1 situations which you can then win easily. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is show a couple of clips of me fighting against Scimitar users just so you can see how it's countered and what you should be avoiding. This also goes to show that Scimitars are seen at all soul levels. This account is level 125. As soon as I see him two-handed, I know exactly what he's going to do. My success rate of just running up to people with the scimitar and parrying immediately is extremely high. Do your best to avoid being this person. Here we have another scimitar user, but this one stacking poise. In this clip, I'm going to try and control my space and abuse my greater range to get in hits from outside of his reach. Also, this always works. Don't get so eager to close the gap that you start swinging the second you get in there. You probably get the idea by now. Again, take this all with a grain of salt. There's a lot of situations in which you can just swing if you want to, and if that's how you have the most fun, then by all means. But if you want to avoid getting parried, you have to think about it a little more. With all this being said, I still think the build is extremely strong and really easy to use, and I recommend it to anyone looking to really get started PvPing for the first time, or for someone just looking for something new to use. I hope this video was informative, and I hope even more that it helps more people get into PvP. I'm going to let one last clip play out, so for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.